let's see, my next one, specific plans, money for
Power for lower income Santa Feans.
Well, I think right now, the highest impact we can have for low-income individuals is housing. If you or a family member or a friend, for example, needs public housing, you know, the demand is so high because there's senior public housing and there's non-senior. The demand is so great they stopped even maintaining a short list. We don't have a short list. It's that hopeless. Your prospects of getting public housing are next to nothing. And so we need more public housing stock here. The city, you know, the city owns a lot of land. I don't know if you folks know that. It owns a lot of land. We just looked at over 20 parcels of land that have been undeveloped that we were considering for donating to an affordable housing future development. That still has great, I'll talk some more about that in a while. So we have a lot of land. We need to work with our public housing authority and collaborate more and build more public housing. That way we can at least get to the point where we have a wait list. We don't even have that now. Okay, so the other, I think, issue to help people is multi-unit housing. I mentioned before that we're at full occupancy right now. There's no way you can get a nice apartment in newer stock. It's a monopoly when you're at 100% occupancy. And so what we need to do is that whole supply and demand, right? You all learned about that, supply and demand. We need more supply of multi-unit housing. And we need to incentivize that. The recession's been very tough on Santa Fe. Many contractors have gone out of business. The margin that these developers require now is so high, they opt out of the affordable housing requirement. They claim financial hardship. And the city has no way of really verifying that financial hardship. So they're gaming our affordable housing requirement in the system that's a part of it. And so to help people is we need to continue subsidizing affordable housing. If you look at the Arts and Creativity Center on Silo Road, right now the level of subsidy to make that viable for a low-income housing tax credit, which is managed by the Mortgage Finance Authority, we've thrown in $2.3 million. We have committed $2.3 million, and I think it only has 60 units proposed. And so the greater the success of our real estate market, the higher the level of subsidy that's required. And so it's kind of a double-edged sword. And so what we need to do is, land donation's not enough. Because we're donating 5 acres to the Arts and Creativity Center, and that's not enough. We had to pony up another $400,000 of infrastructure commitments, in addition to waivers of impact fees, utility connection fees, and so on. And so what we need to do is we need to face facts. Let's stop this ad hoc process of pursuing affordable housing developments. Let's look at the entire citywide. Let's look at all available parcels throughout the city for land donation, and let's pursue them together. Let's put these projects in the pipeline together instead of doing things on an ad hoc basis. That's why neighborhoods, they feel offended. In this last effort to get this land donation, we had actually screened out of 20 plus parcels 6 that were developable and the city was willing to donate. But we pre-selected one of them in one neighborhood. So it's going to beg the question, why did you pick our neighborhood? So what we decided as a result of that meeting is we're going to pursue all those 6 land parcels throughout the city. We're going to move them forward and develop them together, and then solicit interest by the development community to see if they want to build an affordable housing development. But we're going to have to set aside some money in our capital improvement plan for donations for these affordable housing developments to make sure that we enhance their prospects for getting a low-income housing tax credit. That's by far the largest funding source. It's a federal funding source. It's by far the largest funding source that's available in terms of a subsidy. Now, what can we do to empower ourselves? If you elect me mayor, we're going to have an affordable housing bond. We need a permanent funding source right now. Santa Fe Homes program, which is an array of programs that involves down payment assistance, single-family home rehabilitation, and others. We just rely on about $1 million community development block grant. And we're just spreading limited funds, so thin, we're not moving the needle in any of those programs. And so what we need is we need a permanent funding source very similar to what Bernalillo County did. So we need a permanent funding source through bonding. We need a much more comprehensive long-term commitment to help future affordable housing developments and enhance the viability of a low-income housing tax application. And the last thing that I'll do as a mayor is I'll include annual capital improvement plan funding for affordable housing. Mayor Cost, during the recession, to help stimulate the construction market, he made $1 million available of down payment assistance in the capital improvement plan. And I think we ought to just make that an annual thing. Let's institutionalize annual allocations to the Santa Fe Homes program from the regular capital improvement plan of the city. So that's my affordable housing plan. I think the free public transportation can really address a lot of the mobility issues, allowing people from all classes better access to their elected officials, giving them a seat at the table with better civic engagement. And so I think those are programs that would get at helping our low-income citizens. And the thing that really concerns me the most is many people in Santa Fe are paying 30 to 50% of their income on housing. It's called cost burdened. But if we were to have another recession, folks, a lot of these people, they could be out of their homes. And, it could start as missing one utility payment, then it's missing a mortgage payment, and then it just, the wheels come off. And we can't have that happen. And trust me, even in my own district, Hopewell Man area, the Siringo Road corridor, there are folks that are just struggling just to stay in their homes. And so I think there's a lot we need to do in the prevention side as well. All right, thank you for that question. Energy improvements. Well, we've established a goal to be carbon neutral by 2040. This is very ambitious. And I think all the programs to date have been primarily city-centered. But I asked our sustainability engineer, if we're to fully implement all our goals that the city has, how much of that goal will we achieve? He said under 10%. So it's a very lofty goal, but it's going to require a community-wide commitment. I hope no one sees it as an unfunded mandate, but one thing that the Sustainability Commission realized is that if we're to be carbon neutral by 2040, we have to look far beyond the city limits. In fact, they concluded, after they did their modeling in terms of where the primary sources of greenhouse gas emissions are from, they concluded that we have to look at the entire metropolitan planning area. That's the area in the urbanized greater area, even far outside the county. So we need to address alternative energy. We can't just look at within the city limits. We have to look at the entire metropolitan planning area. Half of all greenhouse gas emissions come from transportation. We are successful in behavioral modification through our two-tiered pricing system and our water rates. Well, we need to come up with a public transportation system that's attractive enough and competitive enough with single occupant vehicle travel. We need to get people out of their vehicles. And so it's behavior modification, and I know that we need to find other sources of energy, but we need to change folks, get them out of their vehicles. We need to look at where these sources of greenhouse gas emissions are, like transportation. I chair our Bicycle and Trails Advisory Committee. We have a great system. I love riding my bike. I know others would enjoy being able to get the bus and then take their bike and then get off and ride the trail and get to work. So greenhouse gas emissions being carbon neutral by 2040, I think it's achievable, but it's going to take a grand effort. In terms of the city needs to lead by example, and I feel like we have. We have committed to electrify all of our fleet with one condition, is that when it comes to the police department, we need to make sure that electric vehicles can meet those performance requirements that public safety requires. We made a commitment also to have our city facilities have their energy from 100% renewable. We have a proposal that's kind of working through the council now, but I think it's very important that the city lead by example. Many of you are familiar with a lot of the solar arrays that we've installed throughout at the Chavez Center, on the rooftop of the convention center, the booster station at the raw water pipeline down in Buckman. We just installed that solar array. So I think we're making a lot of progress, but more needs to be done. One thing that I'm proposing as a mayor is that we underwrite the installation of solar panels, photovoltaic solar energy on the rooftops of existing apartments, and pass along the savings to the tenants. This is something where we help low-income people. We increase the amount of renewable energy. It has to be underwritten, folks. Come on. I mean, face it. And so that's kind of...
Follow up?
Sure.
So Tomasitas has this solar panel array with one charging station underneath it. Do you think the city should have solar powered charging stations for electric vehicles distributed at for free, distributed at appropriate points?
We do. We have one in the convention center. We just cut the ribbon on one at the Chavez Center. That was a partnership with P&M. I know that Tesla, I think, has some at the outlet mall, but I think it's only for Tesla, right? Yeah. But yes, I agree, we need more. But I think the most recent one was the Chavez Center. We just cut the ribbon on that one, I think, like a month ago. So come by and see that. I drive a hybrid, a Camry hybrid. It saved me thousands of dollars. I ordered my Model 3. This isn't the Model S Tesla. It's about a year and a half late, and I don't know if my Camry can make it. I've got 220,000 miles on my Camry, so I guess I'm personally committed to electric vehicles, and I guess I'm willing to wait. If Elon Musk keeps launching rockets, he's never going to get to my Model 3.
Well, I got a Chevy Bolt because I was tired of waiting for the Tesla 3.
Hey, Joe, tell him what happened to the Camry last month. He's driven it into the ground. I mean,
it's so old that my catalytic converter completely plugged. So.
That's what tin cans are for.
All right, I'm on question number 11. Improve relations with the Native community. I took a history of New Mexico class, and my professor, who was a former state historian, he gave me two options. He said, Joe, you can either take a comprehensive final, or you can do a genealogy. I thought, genealogy? He says, yeah. So I did a genealogy, and I made a startling discovery. I discovered, and the evidence is irrefutable, I descended on my father's side from a Native American servant. And there was a story recently in New Mexico about that lineage, but basically it was a Native American servant, and back then, as I understand it, the kids that came from the Native American servant inherited equally of the kids from the nuclear family. Startling, and I confirmed it through archdiocese records and census records. And it changed me. It changed me personally, because I know there's many people out there of Spanish descent that are they're just certain, without any proof, that they're 100% Spanish. And the notion of that is like completely unreasonable. And I knew that I was a mestizo, but now I know like the name of the servant. I mean, I know it all. And but one thing I don't know is the census said that my paternal great grandmother was from Navajo country, but there's no real way to know, which Indian tribe she's from. And so it kind of changed me. I think when you really know what your heritage is and how you perceive racial issues, especially in your environment and your community, it really does change you. And so when issues like the Entrada came up, I just saw it in a completely different light. Here we are, a community that wanted to take a slice of time that was peaceful but it was a point in time that was preceded and succeeded by violence and oppression, and say, oh, that's just, it's okay. It's okay. No, it was this particular moment in time was peaceful. It's naive. And I think we as a community need to face facts and recognize the entire context, the origin of the conflict, what happened before and after that peaceful reconquest of Santa Fe. And so, as mayor, I've already gone on record. I don't think the city ought to grant a permit to celebrate the Entrada. I think there's other more appropriate ways that we can discuss and recognize, or even reenact that in whatever way proponents of reenacting and celebrating the Entrada, whatever they want to have, they can have it, but I just don't think it should be done in a public setting any longer. And to make sure that we don't have free speech zones. You know, our previous chief was from New York City. I respect him a lot, but free speech zones may work in New York City, but they do not work in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And so if I'm elected mayor, we're not going to have that. So I guess in closing on Native American issues, you know, the Indian Center just opened here at the Center for Progress and Justice. They don't have a lot of money, and so I helped them meet with Chris Sanchez, our community services director. We have some monies available, you know, for nonprofits, and what the Indian Center does is they're a referral. They help urban Indians, some urban Indians that have just recently located here, to find other services. So they're kind of like this referral service. And so we were able to find some funding for them to kind of help them get established in their new home. They're paying rent there just down the street. And so I'm committed, you know, to help them, to help urban Indians integrate into the city of Santa Fe and get whatever services they need. It's a very difficult adjustment. And I think working with advocacy organizations like the Indian Center can really be a big help. We're a generous city, and I think helping the Native community, I think, is a top priority. And we're seeing more Indians move into the city. And so I pledge, you know, my cooperation and my assistance to help in that regard. All right.
Okay.
You ate at the buffet. How was it?
Those are great questions, you know, and I think, at least I hope that my remarks and my answers truly demonstrate, you know, my commitment to addressing a lot of the social issues here in Santa Fe. And as I've said before, no one person, no singular group can do it and do it effectively. It's going to take all of us. And so I'm asking all of you to join me in this people-powered campaign to truly transform Santa Fe and make sure that we fully address these social issues. And I think that we can't just pass them off and assume somebody else is going to do it, or say it's just going to take time. I think we ought to really shorten our tolerance for them and say it's unacceptable and we need to change it now and set about to doing it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
The gentleman with the camera had
One question.
Oh,
Just a quick follow-up
Yes.
on SFUAD. Once we get through this community input process and we come up with a great plan, how optimistic are you that we're going to be able to get the financial support or the developers involved in that to execute a plan? I mean, I love the fact that we're taking community input, but are we going to be really going to be able to push that in the right direction?
Well, one of the topics that came up in a recent forum was it was a concern from developers and contractors, and what they're experiencing is there's a lack of equity available. Banks are not lending as much. They're not as liberal as they used to be pre-recession, and so we need to really work to address that lack of access to capital. Contractors, and so many have gone out of business. I think what we may end up having to do there is bond some of that work. The city has a tremendous capacity for general obligation bonds. You know, we have a limitation based on the combined valuation of property in the city. and state law allows us to bond a portion of that combined valuation. And the city has tremendous capacity in that regard. And so I would consider a general obligation bond if needed. If it's some kind of a manufacturing or multi-use kind of development, the city has the power to float an industrial revenue bond, IRBs. I don't think the city of Santa Fe has done one anytime soon. So we have some bonding options available. The only other thing I would suggest is tax increment financing. If you want to have localized improvements, their state law allows that area that would benefit to be taxed, and the revenues from that tax would remain within that area that's being taxed. Tax increment financing, a TIF could be another possibility to help the Santa Fe University of Art and Design if a large stimulus of capital is needed to really get this development off the ground.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Cool. Any other questions before we wrap up?
I have a question. Would you approve the Spanish version of the voter's guide so I can get it distributed around town?
I had Maria Cristina with my campaign. I thought she reviewed it. Can you check with her just to see if...
The voter's guide?
Yeah.
Yeah, let me check.
Okay, cool.
Well, how's your Spanish?
My native tongue, sir.
Okay, then let's go. Let's go with it.
Yeah, there you go.
We have to translate it.
We're gonna go on the... Oh, okay, thank you. Listen, thank you guys. Yes.
Oh, I just wanted to follow up on the vacation rentals. If someone is fined, is that going to be significant enough to make them think about not doing it, or is it just a cost of business and they, they continue?
Well, I think we increased the fines, and I think it's a progressive fine system where if they're non-compliant, they basically will not be
So
granted a
eventually
permit.
you push them out.
Yeah.
I heard it's like $500 a day. That's not right, is it?
No, I don't think it's that high. I don't think it's that high.
Should be.
All right.
Cool.
Thank
All
you so
right,
much.
awesome. Thank you so
so
much.
much. Thank you.